Hi everyone, happy Wednesday. Welcome to Wildcard Wednesday. My name is Ben Pulowski. I'm part of Geotab's Learning Center team. Thank you so much for joining us here today. Our topic is new ELD reports. So we have a number of reports that are not released yet, but they will be released to our Geotab marketplace at the end of this week. These are all free custom reports built by Ben Schwartz, who's one of our partner account managers. So today we're going to look at these new reports that we'll be rolling out and some of the functionality of these new reports. So that having been said, let's jump in here. Here is our agenda for today. Pretty straightforward. So we're going to take a look at new HOS logs report settings. So even before we start looking at any of these new reports, we've made some fundamental changes to our reports, which has an impact on what we can and cannot do. We're going to then take a look at all of our new ELD reports and then considerations. So different things to keep in mind as you move forth and hopefully utilize these reports. So we're going to start by looking at these new HOS logs report settings. So the HOS logs report is a report that exists in the database by default. And when you go to automate a report, when you go and set it up for dashboard or email, you have those additional report options down at the bottom, like you do in many other default reports. Now, previously, we didn't have many additional report options to speak of. We were only able to show modifications, and you could toggle that on or off. Well, what we've added in now is, in addition to modifications, we have the ability to run reports by assigned driver or by unidentified drivers, which is helpful in identifying just that, as well as information specific to vehicles. More on that a little bit later. We are also able to pull in different statuses. And what we can do with these different statuses is that we can distinguish different events within the HOS logs report, whether that's the applying of exemptions, whether that's engine power up and shutdown events, log creation, and some different things that go into that. So we have unidentified driver versus driver. That's one of our new settings. If you select unidentified, you're going to get logs for unidentified drivers only. If you select driver, then you are going to get a report that shows all assigned driver logs. Now, here are these statuses groups that I mentioned. So now we can distinguish between these different groups of events within the report. So we have CMV, engine power up and shutdown, certification and recertification of records, login and log out activity, malfunction or diagnostic occurrence. We can look at the application of exemptions, specifically adverse weather, oil well wait time, and 16-hour. And then we can actually see the duty log statuses. Now, this might not seem like a big deal, but the fact that we now have this feature means that we can create a lot of different reports based off of how the data falls into these different categories. Everything was all lumped together previously, and the fact that we can separate this data now, it was largely the impetus to the creation of these new reports. So the reasons that we have these new report settings: number one, it includes new information. So diagnostics and malfunctions, login, logout events, engine startup. Those three right there were previously unavailable in the HOS logs report. We can also view exemptions, which were previously only available through the audit log. So we are consolidating here and putting some more information in one location for you. Reporting efficiency. The first item there is scalability, and that's something that we talk a lot about here at Geotab. It's being able to prepare for growth. If you have this report that works for 10 vehicles or 10 drivers, is it going to work for a fleet with 1,000 drivers? And we want to make sure that it does. We also have the ability now to alleviate unnecessary noise. For example, say we're wanting to pull some information on diagnostics and malfunctions. Well, if we're looking for that information, we're not interested in looking at all of the actual driver logs. We just want to see diagnostics and malfunctions. That's what I mean by alleviate unnecessary noise. It's the ability to segregate that data. And overall, enhanced reporting capabilities. So this is a list of our new ELD reports. They are sorted by the report that they are originally built off of. So we have 5 reports here that are built off of the Advanced HOS Logs report. These 5 new reports are Unidentified Driver, Diagnostics and Malfunctions, Excessive Yard Move, HOS Exemptions, and there's also a new Advanced HOS Logs report. We have 2 new availability reports. One is drivers approaching limit and driver availability. And then we have a DVIR report, unrepaired defect. So let's take a look at the first one. The first new ELD report we have is an unidentified driver report. Now this is a report that is a dashboard report, and it just shows the number of unidentified driver events. We do include annotated logs within the report, but they don't show up in the count that's on your dashboard. So this number right here, this 62, this is the number of unidentified driver logs minus those that have been annotated already. Because if they've been annotated already, you no longer have to deal with them. A new feature that we have in some of these reports is we have the ability to link the report back to the log in the database. So you can see there is a little bit of setup that is required. And I'm looking at this graphic at the bottom where it says server usa112.geotab.com, database Geotab drive. So what you would do is you would enter in your server, and that's found in the URL of your database. So if I jump out of my presentation real quick, I can see that this database I'm logged into right now is my112.geotab.com. This is the server right here. This is my database name, ABC_company. So when I download this report, I would enter in the server name and I would enter in the database name before I save it and add it into my database. There was a report that was in the marketplace previously called the Unassigned Trips Report. This report replaces it. The Unassigned Trips Report has been around for a couple of years now, and of course there have been a lot of changes to hours of service in ELD and Geotab Drive. For those of you who were using the Unassigned Trips Report or still are, the main difference is that with this report, we're now pulling from the source. If you're using the Unassigned Trips Report, we were attempting to pull the same information from exception logic. So again, this goes into the template setup and the MyGeotab setup, just so you know when you go back and look at this deck on your own. So we have the template setup, these steps highlighted in green, and then here's a graphic down here. And then we have MyGeotab setup, which is in this blue box down here, and that font is in blue. So in order to set up this report, again, you will need to enter in the server and the database, do that in the template. And then within the database, you need to select the statuses on, off drive, sleeper berth, etc. Right? And you only want to select that from the statuses list. You will need to know how to edit a template and import a custom report. We have a number of resources available to you that can walk you through and show you how to do that, including some how-to videos. Next is our Diagnostics and Malfunctions Report. This is another dashboard graphic. This is a pretty straightforward one. It just shows you a count of all diagnostics and all malfunctions. If there are 0, the graphic is going to show as green. If there are 1 or more, the graphic is going to show as red. Of course, the Diagnostics and Malfunctions Guide is a good reference to help assist you with this. That is, of course, one of the documents that is required by law to be kept in the vehicle. And the report is going to show which vehicles have diagnostics or malfunctions. There is no template setup required for this report. MyGeotab setup, after you add it into the database, you're going to select malfunction or diagnostic occurrence from the statuses list. We have a recommendation on best practice for this report. We recommend that the date range is set to the previous 7 days and the refresh period is set to daily. This is just a recommendation. If you want to look at a larger or even a smaller date range, you're absolutely welcome to do so. Something else to point out here is that when you set up this report, you have to run the report by an unidentified driver, which is another advantage of this new feature. because malfunctions in diagnostics follow the vehicle, not the driver, not the user. So if you select driver, you're going to get a blank report. So you have to make sure that you select unidentified here. Our next new ELD report that we have here is the excessive yard move report. Now, this is going to show you the number of yard move events that have surpassed a certain mileage, and that is customizable. So again, this report will show you the number of yard move events that have surpassed whatever threshold that you set. Within the template, you have the excessive yard move threshold, which is this number right here. So this is set to 5 miles, which means it's going to count up the number of times that my drivers had yard move events of more than 5 miles, and then total up those for the dashboard. When you set this up, you also need to make sure that you save it on the dashboard graph tab. That's in order for the dashboard graphic to display properly. Within the MyGeotab setup, you would select the statuses, on, off, drive, etc. from that list below. We recommend this report is set to display the previous 7 days and the refresh period set to daily. HOS Exemptions Report. This is a dashboard report that shows the top exemption users. So you have the name of the user, and then you have the count of exemptions. This does not take a yard move and personal conveyance into account. This report is based off of oil well wait time, adverse weather conditions, and 16-hour exemptions. Within the MyGeotab setup, we have a run report by driver, and then statuses, others, and the exemptions listed there. We recommend this report, previous 7 days, and refresh period of daily. So this gives you really good insight on who's doing what. If drivers are trying to get away with applying adverse driving conditions during rush hour much more often than they should be. If they're taking advantage of that 16-hour exemption at times when they shouldn't be. So now we have our new advanced HOS logs report. So you have, again, the HOS logs report that is built into the database by default. It's in everyone's database. It's the same report. This is really an updated version of that report. We have some new fields that have been added into it. We're able to see the driver group, so the group the driver has been assigned to. We're also able to pull shipping commodity information. So the company, the commodity, and the document number, which is the information the driver puts into the app when they start their haul. Also, we have an unverified logs tab, so we can isolate all unverified logs. We have that edit log hyperlink. So that's what we were talking about a few moments ago, where you put in the name of the server and the database, and then it'll link you right to the database, right to that log. Again, this can replace the default advanced HOS logs report that's built into your database. There is no dashboard graphic for this one, so we do recommend that this is set up as an emailed report. Within the template setup, we have the server name and the database name, just like I showed you before. Within MyGeotab, you would list statuses. This is a report, a driver's approaching limit. So the dashboard graphic is going to show a count of how many drivers are approaching the limit. If there's 0 drivers approaching their limit, the graphic is going to show as green. If there are 1 or more drivers approaching their limit, the graphic is going to show as red. The driver does have to be in a drive status, either drive or yard move, in order for them to appear in this report. As you can see here, you can actually put in the threshold for when you would want a driver to appear in this report. In this example, it's set to 10 minutes. So this report would show drivers who are within 10 minutes of a violation. You can make that shorter or longer if you want. That's the only setup required for this report. We also do have our violations alert report. Now, ideally, these 2 reports are probably best used in tandem. So this new report and then the violations alert report, which currently exists in the Geotab marketplace. So that way you can be notified if it's approaching, and you can also be notified when it happens. So that violations alert report is already available. You can find that in the marketplace or in our compliance and implementation guide. Driver availability report. So this is the same idea as the availability report that is built into the database already. It's just a dashboard version of this report. And you get that graphic down there in the lower right, and it shows the number of drivers with availability in blue versus the drivers who do not have any availability, which are in gray. The actual report itself, you can see there on the left, lists each driver, and then just like the availability report in the database, how much time they have remaining before rest period, driving, duty, workday, and cycle. This is an unrepaired defect report. So this is our new custom DVIR. Dashboard will display a count of both normal and critical defects. Now, once the defects have been repaired, they will disappear from this report. So these are normal and critical defects that have not yet been repaired or not yet been addressed. We recommend that this report is set up to the previous 14 days, refresh period daily, and of course you have a dashboard graphic that you can put on your dashboard for easy monitoring. Now, that's a look at all of the new reports. So a couple of things to consider here before you go off and add them to your database, or if you're a reseller, add them into your customer's database. The first thing to consider is the fleet size, or the number of drivers. For example, say you're dealing with a fleet that has 500 vehicles, and you're using a report where the recommended date range is the previous 14 days. Well, maybe you'd want to reduce that to the previous 7 days. If there's a large amount of data, if there's an excessive amount of data, that could cause performance issues on the database. So again, if it is a larger fleet, you may have to scale it back a little bit, and that's okay. The date periods that we list within the report, these are recommendations. As I mentioned earlier, if it is a larger fleet, you may want to go with smaller date ranges. It depends on how many employees you have. It depends on who's monitoring this data and the other responsibilities of their job. So again, date periods are just a recommendation. And then finally, the real life application. There are some pretty powerful things that these different reports can do. And the recommendation here is don't let it become just another report on your dashboard. Don't let it be wallpaper. Focus on what's important to you. If you're not that concerned about unidentified logs or you have that under control, well, you don't necessarily need to add in that report. So think about what's important to you, what your fleet might be struggling with or what they might want to address, and then you can use that to determine what reports would be best for you. So we have not a question, but a suggestion. It would be really nice to be able to pull only yard moves or personal conveyance. Yeah, and we do have a custom report that will be coming out at some point that will focus on yard moves and personal conveyance. And that will be coming to the marketplace very soon. So thank you all so much for joining us here today. We really appreciate you taking some time out of your day, and look forward to utilizing these new ELD reports. Once again, if you have any questions, you can reach out to us, your account manager, your support staff, your reseller, whoever it is that you contact. Thank you all so much for attending. We appreciate it. Have a great day, have a great week, and we'll see you soon.